Okay, everyone. So, welcome back. We're going to be looking at GILEAD Sciences today, their stock valuation, and this is Friday, July 24th. The week closed markets had Gilead at about $73 and change, which for this guy was not the best news. I will show you this is where we left off last time if you've been following the series. Just doing an update, but basically we're looking at a number of assumptions, and one of the ones that I had a real tough time last time coming up with was what is a realistic hospitalization percentage rate? I spent some time. We'll look again at the growth rates that's changed since. So the last one I did was the 11th, so that was 13 days ago. The hospitalization rate times the number of the population infected, percentage of people infected, times the population, times the price per treatment. So we know all these things. The yellow boxes are things that are assumptions. One thing we have here is a like 85% capture rate of the revenue. So there are going to be competitors, and in fact, Gilead Sciences is not going to be able to capture any licensing revenues until after there's a competing treatment. But anyway, this is a Monte Carlo simulation, 200 different iterations, and just trying to come up with a stock price. I have about a PE of 14. This is a very high earnings per share. The earnings per share estimated somewhere around $6.30 is the consensus EPS. And so this model is going to push that way up if hospitalization rate is 14%. But I'm actually going to set it at 7 here because I think that's a more realistic number. With a 4% infected rate, 3 million people, 85% capture rate, 1.5% standard deviation. It's probably a little high, so let's drop that to 1%. And 2% standard deviation on the hospitalization rate. Puts it at $96 stock here. Now that's way higher than most analysts have it. You can see a number of different countries. Here we have Brazil, US, Colombia, Chile, Iran, Peru, India, South Africa, Mexico, and Kyrgyzstan. Now some pretty flat, but very much explosive growth is possible, as we can see here, big spikes, steep slopes, and things like that. So last time what we were looking at, we've added about another million cases in the US in the last 13 days. So last time I was doing it was about 1%. But one thing I wanted you to notice, this is actually from Florida, but the thing I was trying to figure out was the hospitalization rate. What's the capacity that most states or countries are going to be able to handle? And the reason that I looked at that is because if you go to Gilead Sciences website and you read, they say that they would expect that a lot of people would, be those more critical cases, and that they would need something like 14% of people. Here it is, according to the World Health Organization. How much stock you put in them at this point? But I mean, they're great. I don't want to downplay their efforts at all. Approximately 14% of patients with COVID will experience severe manifestations of the disease that require hospitalization and supplemental oxygen, and 5% will require treatment in intensive care units. So I would assume that if you're hospitalized, that you're a candidate for remdesivir. I don't think that they would just make you kind of suffer along on supplemental oxygen and only give it to you by the time you get into the ICU. That seems ridiculous to me. So, but 14% hospitalization rate seems way out of control based on, I had to go find that number. When I was doing that model, that was an important part. If you change this hospitalization rate from 7 to 14, it dramatically changes the stock price. I mean, you can see that doubling that aspect, 114, the stock price is in the pink, and so 140, so that was a $50 jump. So that's a huge assumption in my model, and so I needed to figure out what's realistic. So, okay, this is what they're saying, but I don't think that's realistic. What I did find, there was this video, there was this woman named Jones, I think. She worked in Florida, so she used to oversee a lot of the data. She was a data scientist, and she got fired. Apparently, they said that she was for insubordination because she wouldn't give, I don't know, I guess she said that they wanted her to manipulate data, and she wasn't willing to do it, so she got fired. But then she put together the site. You can find it at floridacovidaction.com, and they have, not everything is like available, but everything that they have available to them, they put it in here, and they have all kinds of different data, even by county, and all kinds of interactive maps, things like that. Why I am here looking at this is because of this number right here, the number of beds available. So I have this other site, and I can leave you this, but my friend made this. What we see is that there's total cases and there's hospitalizations, and this is in Florida, you can see here. And this comes from the COVID tracking project, Florida Department of Health, open data, the COVID tracking project. And so if you do the simple math, the division on that, the 23,000 people over the 402,000 is about 6% hospitalization rate. And then if you go over here to this other one we were just looking at, you can see that there is some capacity still left. They have almost 13% left. So if they were to bump that up to no beds available, that would put it at a 7% capacity that they could have. And so we can put that in the model. And that's really helpful. I'm going to put international a little lower because it's a mix of developed and developing countries. Now the next big question is, what about this, the population infected? We're going to go back over here and look at that. We have top countries, and so we'll look at some of those. Now I did some of this math last night, but what I'm basically doing is just a carryover from the last video, is looking at a 2-month window. So I'm going back to May 24th until today, July 24th, and looking at the growth rate. We have a lot of countries here, like for example, 10,000 over a million is 1%. So most of these countries in Europe or the Middle East, under 1%, this 0.5%, all these are under 1%. US is at 1.2%. And so there you go. But the growth rate is much more of an important thing, a much bigger factor. So if you have an $80 trillion global GDP and you take a 5% hit on that, just a 5% hit, this is a $4 trillion problem. These top countries, most of them were under 1%. If we go over and we look at the Americas, Peru is at 1.1, Chile 1.8, 1.2, 1.1, less than 1, less than 1, 1.3, less than 1, less than 1, less than 1, less than 1. But just maybe think about it like awareness. These are now the new testing, the new reports that's available to the public, to the news outlets, to the political folks, and now they're well aware. So like most of these countries very low, like 12 cases per million in Cambodia. So you would probably say that that's just like 4 cases per million in Vietnam. You would say that that's probably like due to a lack of either information spread or available data on test results. Anyway, I'm going to read you just the growth rate since 2 months ago, so since May 24th. And I will start in Europe. So Austria had 22% growth rate, Belgium 13, Denmark 16, France 17, Germany 14, Iran 109%, Ireland 5%, Italy 7%, Netherlands, Holland 15%, Spain 35%. Now you can see here the Americas. This is where it's really, really explosive, and you can see just on the screen, I mean, the slope of those lines, the exponential growth. So Argentina, 11x, 11 times. Bolivia, 10 times, and just in the last 2 months. Brazil, 530%. Canada, 31%. Chile, 390%. Colombia, 9x. Ecuador, 113%. Mexico, 428%. Panama, 420%. Paraguay, 379%. Bangladesh, 543. Cambodia, 50. India 834%, Indonesia 922, Japan 64, Malaysia 22, Philippines 429, South Korea 24%, Singapore 55%. So when we were talking about doubling times, I'll try to put up a picture. Joseph, maybe his name's Stephen Gottlieb. Gottlieb, he's a former chief of the FDA in America, so that's the Food and Drug Administration. Now he currently sits on the board of Pfizer and also Illumina. And they bring him on, I think, on CBS a lot, and he talks about things like how currently in the U.S. there's a doubling, the number of people who have the disease, it doubles every 40 days, and he says that number is getting smaller. He thought that it was possible that half of Americans would have it by Christmas 2020. So now when I first heard that, I was like, I mean, that's ridiculous. We're at 1%, you know. You'd have to like double 6 times, basically, about every month, like he said. I think because you go 1 to 2 is a double, then 4, 8, 16, 32, and the 6th time it would take you to 64, right? So 64% of the American population. So I thought, wow, you know, I guess it's possible. It seems rather unlikely, but when I looked at some of these other numbers, it seems now very, 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 very possible. So what does that mean? I mean, this is where I think, I don't know, a lot of the analysts, let's just go and look at the analysts, what they say, because that's kind of a mind job that I just gave you guys. So Market Insider, this is the Bollinger Bands, and basically you have a contraction here, you can see that over time, and this downward candle, it wasn't, I don't know, I think that they messed up on their data a little bit, but I also like this one. So this is an interesting trading view. I like this. So on the 1 day scene, it's a sell, and you can see a lot of things here. I don't have to explain these to you. It gives you everything you need to know. Strong sell. You can see it on the right-hand side. Moving averages, all sells. Pivots if you're into technicals, Fibonacci's, retracements and things like that. But if you move out to the 1 month, things really change. Like you can see $73.64. Definitely changes in a little bit longer time frame. And so I thought that would be one interesting thing for everyone to know. They do have earnings coming up July 30th, so one thing to know about. And like I said, you do have that contraction here. And this did break out under the bottom standard deviation line. So usually that is like here, this would be a buy signal. So it's pushed, but you can definitely see that it's starting to contract. So usually either upward or a downward move. I'm sure you guys know all about that. Let's go through and look at some of the analysts. So Ned Davis says it's a buy. This was July 17th, closing price $77.51. And so now it's interesting because they had it a buy. They say a equity focus rank of 96, and anything above a 90 is a buy signal for them. You have the 20-day moving average just coming back across the 50-day, so that's a good buy signal, and it's already above the 100-day and above the 200. So that's encouraging. But for me, I'm still down on the position. So Morningstar has the fair valuation at $85. Currently it was trading, or back when they put this out on July 9th, it was $74. They have Gilead close to fairly valued here. And so one of the things, they just say that they're going to have a big problem, that they're going to experience a lot of losses on their HIV portfolio, because a lot of people aren't going to be able to come in for treatments. New patients aren't going to be able to see doctors. And so they just thought that the PE ratio was just basically a lot of hype. A lot of people, like we see, pushing up a lot of these other drug company stocks, hoping that something is just they're going to be able to get in and get out and make money. And so they didn't think that PE ratio was realistic. So there's something really else weird that happened this week, where there was a merger. They bought half the company and then like an option. So there's a couple reasons that I thought that it was going to be not a problem, that I was comfortable with the risk of buying it a few months ago with that upward momentum at 85. One was because this was in that ballpark. And then two, it's a defensive stock. So when you think about sector rotation, and given that we're coming off the top of the cycle, and that this company has a 3.5 dividend yield, and I just thought, this is going to be all right. So Argus on Gilead Sciences, they have a 12.2 times earnings PE on their earnings, and they say that the mean PE multiple is about 11. So back then they put it at about $80 stock. If we go over to CFRA, they have it as a sell. At that time, the price July 16th was $77.51. They thought the 12-month target price was $74, so about exactly where it is this weekend. And they say it's medium risk. You can see a lot of these other things, but I just thought it was interesting just to see what they had to say. This is really interesting. Earnings per share estimated 6.42. That's a nice thing to see. And 6.44 in 2021. Those are the yearly estimates. So we'll see what happens, but it looks like Q2 they're expecting $1.54. We'll see if they beat that $1.54 on, July 30th. Here's the other thing. This is coming from Reuters, and since the EPS is so important, they have the current EPS ending for the year of $6.70. Yeah, so $6.70 was the EPS for the year, December 2020, and they have 29 analysts looking at it. So kind of trivial information, but they had more than 190,000 treatment courses by the end of June 2020, and they expect that they can do 2 million treatment courses by the end of the year, by December 2020. So, and then several million treatment courses in 2021 if needed. So a bit technical but important. This is the production of remdesivir is a long linear chemical synthesis process that must be completed sequentially. It includes several specialized chemistry steps and novel substances with limited global availability. The process is both resource and time intensive, with some individual manufacturing steps taking weeks to complete. Because remdesivir is administered intravenously, production also requires sterile drug product manufacturing capabilities, which limits the numbers of organizations capable of manufacturing the medicine. This complex process impacts the ability to rapidly produce large quantities of drug supply in an emergency situation like the COVID-19 pandemic. In light of these realities, Gilead worked early on, before any clinical trials had started, to procure a steady flow of long lead time raw materials that will accelerate large-scale production of remdesivir by our current and future partners once these materials become available in significant quantities. So I think they made partnerships with 5 different companies. Okay, so this is really important. It says Gilead has signed non-exclusive voluntary licensing agreements with generic pharmaceutical manufacturers based in Egypt, India, Pakistan, and to further expand the supply of remdesivir. The agreements allow the companies Cipla, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Eva Pharma, Farazoson's Laboratories, Hetero Labs, Jubilant Life Sciences, Mylan, Syngene, Biocon Company, and Zedis Cadilla Healthcare to manufacture remdesivir for distribution in 127 countries. And the distribution of remdesivir within each country listed below is subject to local laws and regulations. Now, under the licensing agreements, the companies have a right to receive a technology transfer of the Gilead manufacturing process for remdesivir to enable them to scale up production more quickly. The licensees also set their own prices for the generic product they produce. The licenses are royalty-free until the World Health Organization declares the end of the public health emergency of international concern regarding COVID-19, or until a pharmaceutical product other than remdesivir or a vaccine is approved to treat or prevent COVID-19, whichever is earlier. Now, one thing as an investor, I think we need to ask, what kind of first mover advantage will they have? And, I mean, what kind of licensing revenues are they going to be able to gain? I saw a couple things. I'll put up some news articles. I saw there was the black market price in India for remdesivir was 9x the price. So India, I'm guessing, I'm not sure. I mean, they definitely have a strong middle class. But assuming that they had the developing nation prices, the $360 for the full treatment, and that was 9 times higher on the black market, then what would that be? Say like $3,000. Well, that's about the price. Yeah, that's like the price for U.S. private insured. It's $3,120. So, anyways, if Gottlieb is right, and I mean, we're gonna have serious number of people that end up contracting this, and you have, I mean, even half of what the World Health Organization says as far as the number of people that need to be hospitalized, because there will be capacity that hits. I mean, there's a limit. That's like the bottleneck or the constraint, is how many hospital beds do you have? How many nursing or healthcare providers do you have? Personnel? How many IV bags do you have? Just because it's a 5-day course of treatments, you have to be able to, house people, shower them, get them food, sanitize everything. So you can set up emergency things like some places have done in, stadiums or arenas or, municipal buildings or something like that as like an emergency short-term shelter. But, there's going to be some capacity problem at some point where they're just not going to be able to get this to everybody. Now, the other thing that I should say is that there may be a inhaled version. They started working on that. The high end, the low end. PE ratio 11.6, 11.42, 11.25. So the PE ratio definitely matters. But not as much as this other stuff. Not as much as this. I guess the closing comment is that, going back to Florida, they're currently hospitalizing 6% of the infected. And we know from this other site that they are at 87% full. And they have about 13% available beds, which means they could go up to 6.9% before they ran out of hospital beds. So I could put that in the model. But the problem is with that is that Florida is only sitting at a 1.8% infection rate. Do you get what I'm saying? We could go over to the model and we could push it up to the 6.9% hospitalization rate here, 7% or 5%, whatever. But the problem is they're only at a 1.8% infection rate. They're not going to be able to handle 7% of 5. If 5% of Floridians are sick, they're not going to be able to to maintain this level. So there we are right there, $73.41. That's if all the hospital beds are used up. Which means that really, according to this model, you're only going to be able to see a big jump either from licensing or an inhaled version, or if there starts being some capacity to deliver this drug to people through IVs in some non-hospital setting. And I don't know how likely that is to happen. I would say that is the big drawback with this model, to say that, you could say, yeah, I mean, if Gottlieb's right, 50%, of Americans are going to have coronavirus by Christmas. Okay, I mean, hey, he's the former chief of the FDA, But the thing is, how are you going to deliver that drug to those people? And without a delivery system, unless there's an inhaled version, or they just do like some kind of, do you know what I'm saying? They're going to run out of capacity in the hospitals. So for this to really be, half the people get sick and 7% of those people go to the hospital, there's no way. There's no way 7% of half of America goes to the hospital. It's absolutely impossible. So while the number jumps up dramatically, there is a real problem for ever getting much below this right here. That's the level where Florida's maxed out. The Florida healthcare system is maxed out. And I don't know what happens then. I really don't. Well, like I said, I got banned from the investor subreddit and trying to stir up some conversation with some people, trying to find people that were interested in Remdesivir, who were thinking somewhere along the lines like I was thinking of, how big of a problem is this? How much does the solution work? We know the prices. We have data on the infection rates. We have data on the growth rates of the infection rates. So we should be able to come up with something at least kind of logical. And I mean, I haven't been able to find very many people. I had one comment come through in the last video that said, don't sell under $100. But that was a very fruitful conversation. No, I do appreciate the comment. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hey, stay safe out there. Take care of each other. Be really careful. I know it's hard staying in and all that stuff. Anyway, okay, thanks.